Unveil your fortunate face. Your face is full of grace. Beyond the gate of time lies a civilization with 7,000 years of celebrated heritage. A cradle of civilization. A tolerant world empire. A crossroad of civilizations. A world of artistic forms and shapes. A kaleidoscope of architectural marvels. Recreated for the first time. Iran, 7 faces of a civilization. The first region in Iran to develop a recorded history was Khuzestan. It bordered Mesopotamia and was the abode for one of the earliest civilizations on the globe.
Choghamish, this huge archaeological site that is behind me, was settled around 6800 BC by early farmers. It gradually developed into a major town in the 4th millennium BC that was administered by state organizations.
Among important objects found at Choghamish are a number of seal impressions on clay balls, which have enabled us to portray different buildings and thus picture the town with the help of archaeological findings.
The city was designed in such a way that administrative quarters and residential quarters and workshop quarters were all separated. The alleys and the streets communicated beautifully with one another, and the city had a sewer system.
The largest population center in lowland Khuzestan was, however, Susa. Here, the earliest steps towards urbanization, the second great revolution in human culture, were taken by the Elamites.
In my opinion, this extraordinary land, Susa, was the origin of a phenomenon in the world which we call the urban revolution. The Sumerians and Elamites had taken the fateful steps towards establishing civilization, while the rest of the world was still in the prehistoric era. Elam stretched from Anshan to Susa, from present-day Fars to Khuzestan.
Almost all the techniques that formed the civilized societies were developed during the millennia after the emergence of urban centers in Mesopotamia and Iran. architectural innovations. Metallurgy and geometry. Invention of wheel. And even toys. And finally, abundant, intricate pottery with beautiful designs. As economic interaction intensified, the subsequent need to record and store information eventually paved the way for the development of writing. While the formation of cities marked the beginning of civilization, the invention of writing separates history from prehistory. And thus began the history of mankind. Elam, in the period between the 13th to 12th centuries BC, under its most powerful king, Untashnapirisha, reached its zenith. Overlooking the river Diz, he made a holy city called Dur Untash, what we may call Untashburg, the present-day Chogha-Zanbil. A glorious ziggurat of 100 by 100 meters occupies the center of this royal and religious city. It consisted of 5 stages with a total height of more than 50 meters. Here, priests would conduct religious ceremonies, while sacrifices were offered on special platforms. The importance of women in the Elamite society is indicated by this unique and monumental life-size statue of the Elamite queen Napirasu, the spouse of Untashnapirisha. Weighing more than 1,750 kilograms, it was unrivaled even in Egypt or Babylon. Sculpture and metallurgy were advanced to a new height in the first millennium BC by the incoming tribes who had just established themselves in the Zagros Mountains in Luristan.
To me, the fascination is that they are so unusual and they're so alive and vigorous. Beautiful metalwork. To make one of the most elaborate Luristan bronzes, you have to make a wax model first. Then you cover the wax with clay. You bake the clay so it's hard and the wax in the inside melts out. And then you pour the bronze into the space left by the wax so that each one is unique. You can only do it once.
In 646 BC, the Elamite civilization was shattered by Ashur-banipal, king of Assyria. The Iranian tribes, on the other hand, eventually defeated the Assyrians and for the first time in history formed a noble and tolerant world empire. The Achaemenid Empire. best-known representatives of the Iranian tribes who had migrated and settled on the Iranian plateau were the Medes and the Persians, speaking an Indo-European language ancestral to modern Persian. The Iranian tribes, while absorbing the millennia-old art tradition of the Near East, gave it a new, invigorating flavor and value. This could be seen in the findings from the sites in Malik, Hassanlu, and Ziviyer in present-day Gilan, Azerbaijan, and Kurdistan. In 559 BC, Cyrus, one of those rare leaders towards whom one cannot help but gravitate, unified the Medes and the Persians and initiated what had never been achieved before, the first tolerant world empire. The greatest symbol of Persian tolerance is evident in the Cyrus cylinder, an inscription found in 1879 at Babylon, sometimes referred to as the Cyrus Bill of Human Rights.
Tolerance was the key word in religions in this vast Achaemenid Empire. We all know how Cyrus freed the Jews from captivity in Babylonia so they could return to their homelands in Palestine. But this was not the only case. It happened later in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah as officers of the king who came back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. They did the same thing in Egypt and in Babylonia and among the Greeks of Asia Minor. In fact, they are the first example of international religious freedom that we find in the history of mankind.
Because of biblical references to Cyrus, he was for centuries regarded as a model of a good ruler. Some Muslim scholars also find Zulkarnain in the Quran to be a reference to Cyrus. In celebration of his victories, Cyrus elected an elaborate royal park in his capital city, Pasargadae, which became the model for Persian gardens.
Since we had got two large rectangles, if we divided it with the vision of power, we got 4 parterres, or a chaharbagh. This is one of those very important Persian discoveries in design which the world has taken as a model and was taken eventually to India and to Spain.
The most brilliant Achaemenid king in administration was Darius the Great, who brought the empire to its pinnacle. In Egypt, he built a canal between the Red Sea and the Nile, anticipating the modern Suez Canal. At the same time, a great highway of 1,600 miles, stretching from Susa to the Mediterranean shores, was devised. Using this road, an efficient courier service, a forerunner of the Pony Express, was introduced. To regulate the social and economic life of the empire, taxes were systemized and weights, measures, and monetary units standardized to simplify commercial exchange. In many ways, the Persian Empire was responsible for transmitting a myriad of cultural and technological achievements of the Near East to the Greco-Roman civilization. Darius the Great, whom Plato has praised as the lawgiver, established a code of law known as the Ordinance of Good Regulations, which were carried into all distant lands. In fact, at this time, a new word for law appeared in the whole Near East, the Iranian data, which was borrowed by Armenian, Hebrew, and Akkadian languages. This papyrus from Egypt bears a legal text under Pharaoh Darius, and this clay tablet is a contract for leasing of a house in the 5th year of Darius the Great's reign. Some 2,500 years ago, Persepolis was the sumptuous capital of the great Persian Empire, which, according to Diodorus Siculus, was the richest city under the sun. Reminiscent of the vastness of the Persian Empire are the 23 groups of gift bearers from all over the empire depicted on the Persepolis reliefs.